Welcome to The Ripple, where extraordinary women executives get real about their career journeys. This season, thanks to our partnership with GNW Consulting, you'll hear even more stories from women leaders about how they're building visibility for themselves, their careers, and their companies. I'm your host, Ashley Laabs, and today we're joined by the fearless Brianna Doe. She's the founder of Verbatim, co-founder of Let Her Cook, and the author of the Unapologetic Professional, which hits the shelves on November 10th. She's here to talk about what you can do to stop shrinking yourself to fit the definition of professional. Brianna, it's so nice to chat with you. I'm really glad that you're here with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want to start by talking about your book because the title alone is controversial for me. The Unapologetic Professional. Can you tell us a little bit about it and why you wrote it?
Well, actually, I'm going to throw it back to you. What's controversial?
I want to talk about this in a minute, but it's the word professional. I think unapologetic is one of the best words and professional is one of the worst words. I don't want to talk about that, but I want to hear about it first.
Okay, I'm glad I asked you because I agree. I feel like I have a visceral reaction when I hear the word professional.
Yeah.
Like, be professional. You're supposed to be, like all of these things, you're supposed to be this thing. And it's like the definition or the idea of professionalism or professional is so abstract, and it's this goalpost that nobody can reach. It depends on who you're speaking to, how they show up, what they expect. But to be blunt, it's usually rooted in descriptions that the majority of like marginalized or underrepresented communities don't align with. And by that, I mean women, people of color, LGBTQ plus community, name something, it's on the list. And so I've always struggled with that word. I felt like I tried so hard to chase after this idea of professionalism and being the perfect professional. I spent the first decade of my career like changing the way I laughed, changing the way I talked. I changed the way I pronounced certain words. I was quieter than I normally am, all because I just wanted to fit in and not be seen as like this outsider or the other. And what I've learned through that, it was painful, and what I've learned through that is just this idea of professionalism should be rooted in character and work ethic and how you show up for your team or your manager or your clients or your customers. It should not be rooted in how you look, how you speak, how you choose to identify, how you identify in general. It has nothing to do with that. And I think it's so important for people to understand that and then learn how to actually detangle their sense of self-worth from this outdated definition of professionalism. And to do that, once you go through that journey, which I think is kind of lifelong, but as you go through it, you start to become unapologetic in the way that you show up for yourself, for, your team, for whoever, fill in the blank. So that's where the title came from. The book as a whole is about learning what imposter syndrome is, how it manifests in your life, navigating that, and then building on that. So building a portfolio career, understanding what's right for you. Like, what are your actual goals when you're not defining yourself by somebody else's definition of success, and then navigating that and embracing that. And so I think with every aspect of our lives, whether we work a 9 to 5, whether we work for ourselves, you have to be unapologetic in the way you advocate for yourself, because you're the only one who can advocate for yourself to the extent that you deserve.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with that. It's so jam-packed. It's so loaded with meaning. It's so loaded with associations. Like both of those words, then you put them together and you're like, oh man, what am I in for here?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're so right that professionalism is such a performance, and it's a performance that is written and directed by people who are not like you a lot of the time, right? And instead of practicing empathy and acceptance and curiosity and humility, maybe, we get this performance that's like, no, you need to be something that makes me comfortable. And we're calling that professionalism, right?
Yeah, you summed it up perfectly. I think it's all about the other person's comfort. And I think the discomfort they feel, it's hard to explain. It's almost like this fear of them not being as important or successful as they thought they were if other types of people are also deemed successful or professional or, whatever the word may be. But that's also what makes the world so beautiful. We're all different. And I think the more we not just embrace that, but celebrate it, especially in the corporate world, instead of trying to stifle it and make everybody this, uniform gray blob of a professional, it's the more colorful and impactful our work can be.
I totally agree with that. And I'm curious because my experience of working with women leaders is that a lot of them don't go through this process until they're growing their personal brand, their reputation, their visibility, right? I think that there's a place they get to where they know they want to do this and it would be good for them, but they hold themselves back because they're still worried about performing to that standard and what happens when they don't. They're worried about the consequences of letting that go. And so I'm curious about your journey with that and what it was like. What were those moments when you had to put down that professional performance and make the decision to be unapologetically yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you also make a great point with the consequences. I think the issue is that, correct me if this hasn't been your experience as well, but for me, I didn't see many people, many women, people of color, Black women, or what, fill in the blank. I didn't see many of them doing this
Yeah.
at work. And so I actually did not know what the consequences would be if I did, which is, I would say, even scarier than knowing what could
Yes.
happen. And I think that's part of what you're alluding to with a lot of people don't start going through this process until they start building their personal brand. Once they start detaching or, untangling their identity from their job or their
Yeah.
job title and building something of their own, I think that's when a lot of people start to go through that initial mindset shift of, okay, well, who am I actually? Like, if I'm not performing, who am I at work? Who am I after work? And for me, it's funny. It stemmed from exhaustion. I went through this cycle of burnout over and over and over again, I would say for maybe the first 5, 6 years of my career. And I could not figure out why. Like, I would start this new job, be in it for anywhere from 3 to 6 months, so happy, greatest job ever, love my team for the most part. And then I'd reach this point where I was just burnt out. I was exhausted. I didn't want to do anything. And I could like feel it in my bones. And I was so frustrated with myself because immediately I turned it back on myself. What am I doing wrong? How am I failing as a leader? How am I failing as an employee? Why am I not getting the promotion that I wanted? Why did this person get the promotion? Like, what could I be doing differently? I think you reach a point that moment is different for everybody, but I do think you reach a point where you're so sick of asking yourself those questions, you do turn it the other way. And you ask yourself, okay, is it the system that I'm in? Like, what are my blind spots actually holding me back? And for me, it was trying to fit into this mold that just didn't serve me.
Yeah.
And I started building a personal brand online after that. But before I did, I took a couple years to really start figuring out what it is that I wanted to do. Like, how do I actually define success for myself? Because I used to think it's being a CMO or being like VP of whatever. I thought I wasn't good enough until I reached that point. Healthy. Like,
Yeah.
what will success actually look like for me? And if it is reaching CMO level, that's fine. But I need to do the work and understand if that's what actually matters to me. And what I quickly started realizing is that my definition of success looks a lot different than what I thought it did. And so my definition requires me to actually show up more authentically.
What did that look like for you? What was authentic that you might have pushed away before?
Well, for context, my definition of success really centers around like building a sustainable career in life for myself. I used to work myself into the ground and I genuinely could not tell you why. Like, but I was always striving for something. I was always just pushing myself so much, working multiple jobs, like trying to prove that I was good enough. And what I really care about is building a sustainable career that's centered around the things that I do enjoy, like the aspects of marketing that I enjoy or the aspects of content that I enjoy. And so if I wanted to leverage that and start walking in that, I had to be more honest, one, when I started building a personal brand online, honest in the way that I communicate that, like what I care about, and also honest in the way I present myself anywhere, in a
Yeah.
meeting, in an interview, on a podcast. Like, it could be as, tactical or as actionable as just not hiding my tattoos, or as, emotional or mental as, or psychological as, being cognizant of the times when I start to kind of shift how I speak or change how I speak, that I don't come off too different. Those are a couple of the ways that I've gone about it. And I will say it's very rewarding. It's weird and it's hard to break certain habits.
Yeah.
I think it's a worthwhile journey.
I think it's so exciting to see. I think it's mostly younger women, like younger leaders, so not like necessarily 20-year-olds, although plenty of them are building personal brands, but like, women who are mid-career really leading this charge. Because personal brand is like, what, the last 5 years we've been talking about this? Is not very long. I think the world of LinkedIn has changed a lot in the last 5 years also. And all of this, to me, really stems from the declining security in a full-time salary job. We talk about things like starting your own consultancy, having a portfolio career. All of these things are like indicators that you're not necessarily going to get your full career experience staying with the same company for 20 years, having steady promotions. That's not really the way things work for most people anymore. And like the more that security breaks down, the more your security comes from yourself, right? It's not coming from your employer. And you talked about something that really resonated with me, which is just that you didn't have a lot of examples of women doing this. And that hit me really deep because it's actually the entire reason I started my business.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'd been doing copywriting and content strategy and brand strategy for 15 years. And I started working on like executive ghostwriting and LinkedIn coaching and things like that because I kept on having these, 50-year-old and older women who had been executives for decades. And they had gotten to where they were. They had gotten to like the top rung or very high up the corporate ladder by performing to those professional standards, right? And every time you do that, you're giving up a piece of yourself. And so they had just given up piece after piece in service to this goal. And then they got to the top. And now we're in this place of like transparent leadership and authentic leadership and personal brand. And part of them being a leader is them being a public figure and being themselves, and they don't know how to do it. And I think, when you said you didn't have any examples, that was exactly how I felt. Like it made me so sad to like encounter this a lot because I was like, these are my role models. And, what if success means silence?
That's a tough question to hear, honestly.
It was dark.
And no, but it's so important because it's interesting. I think it's the perfect question. It's a hard question, but it's so much of women's journeys. I would say women and non-binary, like their journeys through corporate over the like decade long has been about silence. The first thing that comes to mind is a show called Mad Men, which I will be honest, I'm obsessed with. I also recognize that it's great.
Yes.
It's also like, the way they treat women is a little problematic.
It's
but
a
I
time
also
capsule.
think
It's not a role model for modern times.
exactly. Do not take it as advice. But
Yeah.
I think it's a really good example of how that silence manifests in the corporate world. Like you were just expected to be silent. If you were mistreated, talked down to, harassed, whatever, be quiet or you might not have a job tomorrow. And, those are very like sinister ways to think about it, but also just silence in general. You had to silence like your authentic voice, as cliche as that sounds, like silence your authentic voice and conform to fit into this boys club, and that is how you climb the corporate ladder. I don't think there really was another way unless you started your own business. And even then, how many examples do you have if you didn't grow up surrounded by that? It is interesting that you point out that these were supposed to be our role models. I think it's really exciting and refreshing to see women embracing their personal brands now, embracing what makes them unique, modeling transparent and empathetic leadership. I think it's incredibly needed. I'm sure it's also difficult to see honestly, if you weren't really allowed to do that earlier in your career.
Yeah.
But what excites me is this next generation of women leaders. I hope they feel empowered to take this even to the next level and model it and for the next generation, you know? I think
But I
it's
also wanted
exciting.
to go to the generations like ahead of us and not just the
True.
generations coming up. Like, I think that's what's exciting about having these conversations is because I don't want to just, I mean, I do want to empower younger women, but I want to unlock everything that the more like senior women in our fields have to say. I want to hear those stories. I want to see them let go of this stuff. You know, like I want my role models.
That's a great point too. And honestly, that's where the gold is too. Like the stories we could learn from more senior leaders, like the more they kind of shed, you know, those fears or the discomfort around being this open and transparent, the more we can learn from them, the more we can learn about their journeys. Like there's just so much power in sharing all.
On the Ripple, you know we are constantly in conversation with leaders who tell it like it is. No Instagram perfect filters. So let's be honest. When you start a new role, you've likely opened a set of reports and dashboards and immediately thought, what even is this? If that's you, or if it's ever been you, you are not alone. GNW Consulting helps marketing leaders get clarity fast. They'll audit your systems, make sense of your MarTech stack, and give you a clear path forward. No tech decoder ring required. Whether you're new to the team or just ready for a reset, G&W can help you lead with confidence from day one. Plus, they're a huge supporter of Wednesday Women and our goal to amplify women and support women executives. So visit gnwconsulting.com to see how they're helping leaders like you get to market faster with less friction. What I want to know is, how did all of this inspire you to write the book? Like, what was your directive? What change were you hoping to see when you decided to put a book out into the world?
Okay, so to answer that, I'll take you back to my LinkedIn journey. So when I first started creating content on LinkedIn, I was so sure I was going to write about marketing, like what I'm learning, the coolest stuff in marketing, all the trends. I think I did like 2 posts about marketing. I was incredibly bored. I said no more of that. And so I started, instead of just kind of dissecting my career, I studied film and media in college, worked in nonprofits, worked in sports photography, and just had kind of like a non-traditional entry into marketing, which was an area of insecurity for me when I first got into it when I was 20, 21. And so I hustled. Like I was working multiple jobs, I was freelancing and then working at full-time jobs, try and just like scoop up as much knowledge as possible. But at that point in my 20s, I barely knew what a mentor was, and I definitely didn't know where to find one. So when I say I was winging it, like we were duct taping that plane together as we flew it. Okay. And because of that, like my first entry into my career, I made a lot of good decisions. I made a lot of decisions that I learned from, like not as great decisions. And what I realized I'm really passionate about when I created content on LinkedIn is like dissecting that journey, like what I did well, what I didn't do well, the experiences with bad managers, the experiences with good managers, what I've learned from both, really anything. Like I didn't want any topic to be off limits. And what I started to realize as this resonated more with me and with people that started engaging with my content, I was just passionate about like helping people take what I learned from my career and apply it to their own, whether it was a situation they were in currently, something they might experience later. But I just loved having really, and I still do, like love having really honest dialogue about just modern careers. Like, what is the future of work? What does leadership look like? How do you show up as a leader and support your team and yourself, but still reach business outcomes? Just all the topics that I think people can be a little scared to talk about. And so the book felt like my opportunity to build a body of work around that. Like all the things that I can't get into because there are character limits on LinkedIn or because I haven't fully fleshed out my thoughts. That's what I could share in the book, but then also provide more actionable takeaways as well. Like, okay, we're going to dissect imposter syndrome. Here's how it's probably manifesting in your life or your career. But the next step Like, here's how we tackle it. Here's what I've learned that worked well. Here's what didn't work well. Portfolio careers. You think you want to build one and have multiple streams of income? Here's how you know if you do want that or if it's the right fit for your lifestyle and your goals. And then how do you actually build it? Burnout. We all talk about burnout, but how do you actually know if you're experiencing it or if you're just in the wrong job? All these topics that I couldn't really dive into, I was able to just really pour into and invest into this book. And my hope with it is that, above anything else, I just hope people feel seen. I think when it comes to growing professionally, my default, I know the default of many of my colleagues and friends, is to try and figure it out on your own, in your head, never share anything, and just assume you're the only one going through it. And I just hope this book opens up more conversations for people and also helps them feel empowered to figure out, okay, what would my career look like if I didn't worry about what anybody else thought of it or thought about it?
Yeah, I think what's really powerful about that is the meta conversations, because I've always felt like your relationships at work are just like friendships, and they're just like your romantic relationship. They're just all human relationships. And, because we put money in the mix, we try to act like they're different, but they're not. And I love that your book is tackling not only, giving yourself permission and the mindset of, being authentic and unapologetic about it, but also the tools to have some hard conversations and some meta conversations about how you have conversations, because those kinds of things are so often just flying under the radar of hierarchy and, trying to get your next promotion or whatever. So I think that is a really underrated skill to be able to have, to come in and have those meta conversations about how you want to be communicated with, how you want to be talked to, what is and is not acceptable conversation, and being able to set those boundaries.
Agreed. And to your point, I also hope it helps the leaders who are overseeing teams with folks who might not fit into this mold everybody else does. Like, instead of feeling uncomfortable with that or trying to reshape them that they look like, their coworker next to them or act like them, here's how you can talk to them. Here's how you can help them advocate for themselves. Like, you get into their brain a little bit and see how they see the world. I hope it helps on that level as well, because learning how to advocate for yourself and build a career is important. It's also so important to have support in that. And whether it's, with the person next to you or in the same season as you or the person that you're reporting to, it's all important. To your point, they're all human relationships.
Totally. And I want to ask you one final question, which is coming back to the idea of our mentors and our role models and wanting to give them permission to be unapologetically professional in their careers. What advice might you give to somebody who's really far into their career and wants to step into being more unapologetic now?
I love that question. What I would say first is understand what unapologetic actually means to you. Because I think there's the obvious, right? Even what we talked about earlier, just being comfortable with who you are, how you define success, and then walking in that. But if you're farther along in your career, you might have more to unlearn in that regard, but you've also learned quite a bit. Like, you've seen people do things that works, things that don't work. You see people, start different career paths, pivots. So I think taking a step back before you try and, take on the whole journey of like learning how to be unapologetic, figure out just how you would define it. And I think the best way to start is asking yourself, what do I enjoy or what's resonating with me about my current career and professional existence and the way I show up? And then what's not resonating and what do I not like? What am I uncomfortable with right now? If I were to close my eyes and be in another career or be a different person, what would I be doing? And then ask yourself why. Like, what resonates with you about that? The more questions you can ask yourself, just ask them. Jot down what you come up with. Don't put any pressure on yourself to solve anything, but just give yourself the chance to dream a bit more freely and explore those thoughts. It's a great place to start.
Thank you so much, Brianna. I think that's great advice. And I feel like I could talk to you about this for hours. I can't believe that our time's already up. So I just want to thank you for coming on and being really open and honest with us and sharing your own story. I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
Thank you. I know this time really flew by, but this was so fun. Thank you for having me.
Now that we're at the end of today's episode, take a moment to reflect about how Brianna's story might inspire your own. How has your definition of professionalism held you back? And how can being unapologetic help you move forward? If today's show inspired you to think of an extraordinary woman leader in your life, let her know about the Wednesday Women Executive Membership. It's a safe space for women leaders to tackle any challenge, ask questions, and uplift others. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your ratings help us grow and inspire even more people. Thank you to our Season 2 sponsor, GNW Consulting, to our executive producers, Melissa Moody and Leslie Greenwood, and to our technical producer, Yelena Georgievich, with Kind Media Productions. I'm your host, Ashley Laabs, hoping this small ripple creates a big wave in your life. Until next time.